All right. All right. Hopefully, everybody can hear me. The joy of live streams is you never know if something's going to go terribly wrong, as it has in the past, and everything blows up. So hang on, let me get all my windows in the right place, and then we will we'll start talking. Cool. So welcome to my Friday live stream, and I try to do live streams on Fridays because usually the week is coming to an end. People are a little more engaged, less stressed thinking about work, especially if you're in the United States. 3-day weekend, Memorial Day is Monday, and I know right now in the thick of coronavirus, a lot of people are working from home anyway, so it just becomes like this great long blah mix of a weekend all put together. So that being said, hello to all of the folks I've been watching in the chat. Somebody from Mars, somebody from Dominican Republic, all over the place, all over the world. I try and move the time of this because I know sometimes I'm at like 1 a.m. in some time zones. So that way I can try and hit the vast majority. Hello, howdy, yippee. All right. So that being said, this live stream is actually almost in response to the previous post I did on CCNA, which was 5 reasons that you won't get your CCNA. I actually took a different spin. I'm not sure if everybody saw that on my YouTube channel. I posted, I think last Friday, last week. I said, I've been saying, here's all the ways to get your CCNA for years. So I thought, let's just put it a little different angle. Like these are 5 things you could do that wouldn't get your CCNA. And then I went into my number 1 thing, which is you didn't build a physical lab. And the response to that video, by the way, was amazing. Saudi Arabia, welcome. United Kingdom, welcome. Peru, welcome. It's been astounding to see how many people are now like, hey, I don't want to build a physical lab. And so that's where I was like, I want to do a video stream to talk with you about why I'm still suggesting building a physical lab and also kind of answer a lot of questions because I know not everybody knows some of the stuff I'm about to say on the CCNA that are going for it. As of the beginning of this year, late February, the CCNA changed radically. When the exam came out, like the week it came out, I'm out there, I'm taking the test. Of course, before they started the testing from home, that would have been so much better. But I posted my initial gut level feel, and I would say initially after walking away from the exam, I was like, oh man, really? Like it was a total shift from the old CCNA, which was very much simulations, very much, it was like, okay, let me think this through. Let me use that paper to the max, and I'm drawing diagrams and this going here. That was the old one. The new one is a lot of questions. I think I had 103 questions, 103, 120, 100 something questions that were fast. I mean, it was like, okay, fact testing. Do you know it? Do you don't? Do you know it? Do you don't? No simulations. There's no simulations anymore. No real, remember, I don't know if you've taken the old one, but the old one had questions where you would pull up images and you would see different router outputs. You could do show commands and like see what's going on. None of that. All of that's gone, and it's now fact testing. So when I was putting the recommendation out there on my last video last week, to build a physical lab, a lot of people were like, well, why? Why build a lab when the exam doesn't have simulations anymore? You're not doing all of the show commands anymore. And the answer to that is because I want you to have a real experience. I will say, Jeremy's opinion, all of what you're about to hear is Jeremy's opinion. I think that Cisco went to this new format because of a lot of the brain dumps that are out there. A lot of people that are just like, okay, if you get this simulation, remember these 5 commands, type them in and do that kind of thing. And it's really hard if you're a test engine creator to create new simulations and all that kind of stuff. So Cisco was stuck between a rock and a hard place where they're like, We can't keep updating these simulations. People are memorizing the commands that you have to type in to do them. So let's just do away with them, and let's just go into a massive amount of pool of questions that can be easily swapped out and test that way. And it's kind of like, it's like one person ruined it for everybody, kind of thing, because I think that I really I enjoyed the old exam. The new exam was kind of like, it's just exhausting, just because it's just a lot of rote memorization. So that being said, why do I recommend that you still build a physical lab? The reason why is because if you don't, you will end up like a lot of other people that are going and taking CCNAs and actually getting into the real world and getting nailed. And here's what I mean by that. Building a physical lab will not only let you build something that's real, and I'm talking you're physically plugging in the cables, and there's literally a tactile, how about that? A tactile thing that happens when you physically are plugging it together and you're like, okay, I get this. Something lights up in people's brain, and I see it happen. I came from, I know it's been a while that the e-learning revolution has happened, but I came from the classroom world. I taught for years and years and years CCNA. And when students would come in the classroom, I would have stacks of equipment there, and we'd talk about it, and I could just see them like, and I'd be like, okay, first lab, cable this thing up, go. And people would be clicking in, and they even doing that initially, they'd be like, okay, I kind of get what just happened there, but there's still something that like synaptics that didn't connect in their brain until probably day 2 or 3 of the class, where they're like, oh, okay, that represents an office. Okay, and I would actually watch them start rearranging the stuff on their desk. And actually, hang on, let me show you this. I brought some slides with me from, I know some of you have been taking the CBT Nuggets course. Let me show you this. They would start setting up stacks like this, where they'd be like, okay, there's Arizona, okay, there's Florida, there's Nevada, and that's how I geared the new CCNA at CBT Nuggets. Is I was like, I'm gonna do it with physical gear, and I'm gonna do it exactly like I used to do it in the classroom, and how I would watch people be able to connect to those things in logical piles that really connect for them. Now. Am I saying that it's all physical? You don't have to practice the things. No, I actually saw, I just saw it rolling through. Brian has said, simulations are the only reason I passed the old exam. And I get it. It like setting up and Brian's like, how did he do that? How did he read my question? Well, you guys are like a ticking thing over here on the side. I'm seeing hello from Jamaica, that cable click, like all of the, I amaze myself that I can keep my thoughts straight as I'm watching you guys talk over here on the side. So I am, by the way, one of the reasons I do live streams is so that I can talk with you, not just at you. So I'm going to take just a minute. I'm going to hit a lot of the questions over there on the side. Because John, actually your question right there is exactly where I'm going. You do need to practice and, the iOS. I'm not saying like, oh yeah, you'll totally nail the CCNA if you can physically cable things up. I would say exactly the opposite. The CCNA doesn't have you physically cable anything. There's nothing physical about the CCNA. It's all, do you know the iOS? Do you understand routing? Do you understand, what a routes are? And yes, I will name specific Cisco products that we should be using through this. So the big thing is, yes, you will need to know the iOS and how to configure Cisco devices, which you can do in a simulator. But if you can do this for real, and here's what I mean, if you can set up your house to be routed, let me go back here, to be routed through a simple network like this, like take this Nevada network. What is this? It's one router, it's one switch. Now I've got, you're like, no, there's one on top. No, so this stuff, hang on, let me grab my pen real quick. This stuff right here is the stuff that just connects this little Nevada network to the rest of my house. Over here is Jeremy's house, right? And this is what allows me to connect this into the real internet and actually have real internet connections coming in here, and it routes it for the inside of the Nevada network. And that's what I'm saying is set that up in your house and you begin evolving to the kind of person that people want to hire. Let me say this, and then I'm going to hit a lot of the questions that are popping in there. The CCNA. Let me ask you this. How do I say this? Why are you going after a CCNA? To get a job, right? Like most people go after the CCNA because once they have the CCNA, they have something that distinguishes them to get a job, right? It sets their resume apart. And what I would say is, yes, that's 100% correct. Or maybe the employer's requiring it, which is a smaller group. When you get, let me say that, before you get a job, say you have your CCNA, and the job is over here, there's some magical event that happens right in the middle of that. It's called the interview, right? And if you do simulators and you get the concept of how to set up a static route, for example, but you haven't actually built a network, the interview will screen you. In most cases, I'm not saying all the time. I've seen people slip through, but people have started to realize there is a concept called a paper CCNA. And I have a feeling with the new format of the CCNA, you're going to see more of them. And what is a paper CCNA? It's somebody who can achieve the certification but has never actually done a thing in the real world. I mean, imagine a paper doctor. You're coming into the hospital and he's like, all right, I read about this. I even did this in a simulation. No, it's you want a doctor before you're on that operating table who's like, yeah, I know exactly what I'm doing. I've done this. And that's what people are going to want when they go after the CCNA. And that's why I have people build a physical lab environment. And that, so much has been said on that. There's if you go to Network Chuck's channel, which by the way, he has totally ruined. Every time I'm like, I should start by just sipping some coffee. I'm like, he stole like coffee. Like I can't use coffee without somebody being like, you're like Network Chuck. I'm like, I've been drinking coffee before Network Chuck was born. That sounded a lot better in my head than it did when it came out. But the point is where am I? Talking about the physical lab environment, that's where it allows you to put all of those puzzle pieces together. So now, before I forget, because I've seen it, William, I think, asked it before the beginning. Kyle, somebody, I saw it roll through. What about the CCNP? Where do you go with the CCNP? And then I'll start showing you the actual equipment that I recommend, right? And I have somebody showing up at 12 o'clock, so I got to make sure I wrap up in no more than 20 minutes. What was I talking about? CCNP. I don't recommend a physical lab for CCNP. Like what? No, that's what I'm saying is don't go nuts on a physical lab. And if you have a physical lab, and you want to use it for CCNP, then use it. That's why right here I recommended a lot of the equipment that I did. Let me just clear that off for a second. Is because the stuff that I have here in these piles is the same kind of stuff that you would use for a CCNP. But the reason I'm saying I don't recommend the CCNP is because I'm assuming at the point you jump from CCNA to CCNP, the physical picture and actually connecting the dots of the physical equipment is done. Now, it's a lot faster to whip out a packet tracer, a viral, a GNS3, an EVN-G, whatever. And there's so many of them that you're using. I'll talk about them in a second. And just put together a quick topology and go through the situation. So for CCNP, and Steve is asking, which one would you use for CCNP? GNS3, CML, whatever. They're all great. Packet tracer, once you get to CCNP, is a little limiting because packet tracer is a true simulator, whereas GNS3 is an emulator. Viral is an emulator, so that you actually can have the full capabilities of the iOS at your disposal versus packet tracer where there's a few things. So second reason I suggest using a simulator for CCNP is at the CCNA level, you're going to run it. If you're using a virtual environment, you run into bugs and you don't have enough knowledge yet to know, whether it's a simulator or an emulator, you're going to run into weird bugs. And you're still so new at the CCNA level that you don't know if it's you or if it's the simulator. And you might spend days, and then you finally Google it and you're like, oh, this is a bug in GNS3. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, talk about demoralizing. So that being said, so let me. I'm just watching the questions popping through on the side. So let me grab a few of them. Wow, there's been a lot that have come in so far. So let me just grab. So first off, hello to everybody, even Matt in Oklahoma, Leon from Nigeria. It's great to have you with it. So Michael, my college had lab racks for us to use, but they were running older equipment. Still cool, definitely helped a little. And by the way, the stuff that I'm about to show you, stuff I suggest is all older equipment, because the newer stuff is really expensive. And the CCNA tests the core of networking knowledge. There's not new stuff on the CCNA. And I'll talk about some of the automation stuff in just a minute. Scrolling down, Salah is asking, and I'm going to fill in the blank because Salah just typed in wireless LAN controller. Do you need a wireless LAN controller for the CCNA? I don't think so. That will save you probably a couple $100 right there in lab equipment, because the CCNA tests on wireless LAN concepts. It does not pull up the interface of the wireless. Hypothetically speaking, I think the best possible, you probably won't see the interface of a wireless LAN controller, and you have to navigate around or anything like that, or a wireless access point actually join. I mean, I know some of you that took my CCNA class at CBT are like, well, you had a wireless LAN controller. Well, yeah, because I wanted to show it to you, and I wanted to set up a real wireless network, and I did in that series. So watch that and get the experience from that. Save the money on that, because there will be questions on wireless on the exam, absolutely, but it's going to be more so, again, fact testing. Which encryption type does this? And you may end up with, like, what section on the interface would you click on to access these features? I hate those questions because I don't even remember those. It's like, I mean, if there was an interface right there, I could click it for you, but I don't remember off the top of my head. So, scrolling down, I'm just looking at some of the questions. Cheapest, most effective lab I can get. Matthew, I'm gonna hit that one in just a second. You can't simulate a cable click. Absolutely. So let me scroll down a little. Greetings. Hello. Hello. Yuka. I literally just passed my CCNA 4 hours ago, thanks to you and Keith. Awesome. That is great news. So that Jamie, great news. Good. Okay, so let me show you what a lot of you are here for. What is the equipment that I recommend? And some of you are going to recognize some of these pictures and slides. This is still it. On the router side, I would suggest, and on the ultra cheap side, 1721, 1750. You can see a picture of it right over there, 1751, and a 2611. That's about as cheap as I can get on the router side. And I will say I've added a couple of these to these that you'll see in just a second. Mostly cheap, and when I say mostly cheap, probably between $100 and $200 is my guess. Maybe $50 to $150, depending on your bargain shopping ability. Those two. My favorite, 1921, and the reason I highly suggest that one is because that's a quiet router. One of the things you're going to find out really quick is these are really loud. Not really loud. It's just that, woo, if you've been in an IT closet, you know what the sound is. Woo. And after a little while, you start losing your mind. Some people stop hearing it. To me, it's like crickets chirping. I'm like, and I usually stick in those noise-canceling headsets if you don't have a separate room for it. And when you're doing a lab, that's a big deal. Also, the bigger routers you go, the more heat they kick off. And being that I live in Arizona, this weekend we're looking at 103. By next week, 110 degree temperature outside, Fahrenheit. It gets hot quick. So that's the router side, and I'll hit some of the questions in just a second. The networking doctors asking, can we just use packet trace or GNS3? I just answered that, but I'll loop back around on that one as well. The switches. These are the switches that I recommend. You can see right up top, super cheap ones, 2950s, 3550s. My favorite, 2960s, 3750s. 3750 really, and 3550 because you can do a lot of the layer 3 switching, which takes you right into CCNP. But here's the trouble. Anytime I've done something like this, and I've done session, and some of these are my, in the actual CBT Nuggets CCNA course, it drives the price of equipment up because we live in a supply and demand world. As soon as people are like, oh, Jeremy said go get these, the eBayers actually get more demand, and so the price goes up. So let me show you. I'm gonna just give you a list. Get your screen capture tool ready right here. This is the list of routers and switches. Like these will work. Any of these will work. For CCNA. So what I would suggest is just grab these guys and start throwing them in eBay. See, and watch, when's the next cheapest one coming up, or sometimes Amazon has a great deal. That list, and you can see that I threw the 800 series up there as well. The reason, so everybody got it? Everybody screen capped it? Okay. The reason that I didn't have the 800 series on my original one is it has a built-in ether switch module in some of the module, which for somebody brand new getting into CCNA is like, VLAN interfaces, things like that. Like, it can be overwhelming. So that, but just know that going in, I talk about ether switch modules. I talk about VLANs in that, in the CBT Nugget CCNA course, but that also has wireless as well, integrated into the routers. So you can actually get, these are the antennas. You can get the wireless going right off of that box. So I'll flash it up there one more time if you were getting a screen cap. And actually, hey, it's YouTube. It'll be available afterwards. Question: what iOS should we have? Also coming in, and this actually, I'm gonna networking doctors. I'm gonna hit your original question and that at the same time. I am a realist. I get it. Buying a physical lab is sometimes just not possible for people. I know there are people in the military that are on tanks, and can't get a physical lab in there. I know there are people that they just can't get a shipment. They can't afford, there's a cost issue. I just can't afford this. I have to use a virtual simulator. Then don't hear me say don't use a simulator, don't use an emulator. Just do it. And the best thing I can tell you to do, and I'll answer a huge question that happens all the time. By the way, I have switched over to Microsoft's, what browser is this? Microsoft Edge? It's not Internet Edge anymore. It's Microsoft Edge. And it's great. But I still use Google as my search engine. So I'm going to do GNS3 iOS images, right? I'm going to show you right now the number one most common question. How do I get the iOS? You come over here to iOS images for Dynamips, which is the engine behind iOS images. And Glenn, I'm going to answer that question in just a second. iOS licensing. And everything I'm about to show you right now, I'm just a messenger. I'm just showing you something, right? So it's saying, hey, this is the iOS versions that we recommend, right? So you click on this, you're like, okay, so these are the different mainline versions of the iOS. Okay, where do I get this? Well, we all know, or you should know, that these are Cisco property. You are not allowed to use these in a production environment. Because that's what Cisco has created. That's their property. But in a lab environment, a lot of people will use the image. So you just take this image right here, go to Google, and you copy and paste that in there, and you will get a download site that has those images right on there, and you can download it from there. In a way, I just kind of became a torrent right there. I don't actually host the image, but I showed you how you can get them. And that's how you can get the image for for GNS3, for EVE-NG, for all of the platforms that are emulators that run an actual image. That's how you can get it. And what version you should use? You just use the version that works and doesn't crash. This is one of the reasons I don't suggest using emulators when people are first getting started, is because there's a lot of legwork to go through and just figure that out. Like, okay, oh, that one crashed, that blew up my computer. Oh, I lost it all. Like there's a learning curve to get into the emulators that you don't have to do when you have some physical gear. So that being said, let me do this. It is 10:47. I've got about 8 minutes before I have to jump off and meet somebody who will be at my door. So let me just dive into a lot of the questions. And if you have questions right now, ask them. Again, beauty of live stream is I get to talk with you and not just at you. So I'm going to scroll back up a little bit on some of the ones that I missed. Giles, I know you can't specify a specific place, but do you have any suggestions for reputable companies that are supplying pre-built packages for those that can't always scramble around and buy individually? That's a good question. So there's a ton of companies. I actually thought about doing this myself, is building like pre-built packages. It's just hard. It takes a lot of work to actually get the equipment, get the iOS, make sure it works, and sell them. I don't have a recommendation of a company that's doing it, but know that you're probably going to pay 50 to 100% more, by buying a pre-built package, because they have to pay for their time and labor and putting that all together, making sure it all works. But that being said, if you just want the gear, and you know it works, it's a time versus money thing. So I don't have someone that I know that I'm like, yeah, that's the way to go. I know this is a CCNA, but what lab equipment do you recommend for CCNP? I mentioned that earlier. Hamaza. I don't recommend physical equipment for the CCNP, but if you do use the recommendation that I gave right here when I went through and hang on, where's my pen? Right here where I said, here's the pods that I suggest. Here's Arizona, screen cap that. Here's Florida, screen cap that. Here's Nevada. When I built those 3 pods for the CCNA at CBT Nuggets, I intended to use those as we moved into Encore. It just, when CBT Nuggets built the Encore course, there was so many instructors that jumped into it. We were like, we're just going to talk about topics. We're not going to have a lab that carries us through the entire thing. So that's why you don't see those resurrected and there's no dinosaurs in the Encore. But I do suggest using emulators. Matter of fact, in CBT Nuggets, if you're on there, we have labs for the CCNP that take you right into an emulator. So that's that. Let's see. Can we use? I talked about that. Juan. My name is Juan. Hey, Juan. From Mexico. Been following. Started with CCNA. Oh, okay. Just saying hi. Good to see you. Thanks, Juan. So I'm thinking for going for the CCIE straight up. Whoo, Harris. If I go, I go down. I would say go for it. You can go, and you've always been able to go for the CCIE straight up. It is very real world. And that's if you've got real. That was my biggest challenge when I got the CCIE. What is that? 17 years ago. Wow. Back then I knew CCNA, I knew CCNP from again books, and you could call me a paper CCNA, CCNP back then. It was the CCIE where I was like, wow, this is real, and that's that. So yes, as long as you can do a lot of really cool and creative stuff, you can go straight for the CCIE. So combine physical and virtual. You can emulate dynamic routing. It will save you a lot. Yeah, you could do that. But again, there's a learning curve in bridging, for instance, GNS3 to a physical network and making that work. So love from India. It's about 12:15 a.m. I know. In India, it's just a time swing. Sorry. So let's see. What else do we have? iOS. Okay, can you install the iOS in real gear? Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. So the iOS that I just showed you how to get the iOS just by Googling, you can use that on real gear as well. The challenge will be, and this is a great challenge and a great learning curve because you do it all the time. How do you get the iOS from your computer onto the Cisco device? And that's where you'll start learning things like X modem uploads, like getting TFTP going in a ROM-mon situation. There's a lot you can learn by doing that, but it will take you days. And I've got to emphasize this. To know something really well, to where you can not only get the CCNA, like getting the CCNA, you can get just by studying if you're a good studier, right? That's the new format. But to know something really well, you have to put in the time. I don't know any other way. I really don't. Like, sometimes people will be like, it took me a week to figure out how to get the iOS onto my router. And they get that feeling of like, I am a failure. No, you are not. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've been in a data center, a router goes down, the flash is bad because that happens and routers will run for years, right? And you don't know the flash is bad until it comes back up and it's in ROM-mon. And you're like, and if you've never spent that week in your lab trying to figure out how to get an iOS booted on a device, like, you're stuck, you're hosed, you're on the phone with, tech support trying to get through 5 levels before you can get to somebody who will walk you through doing the stuff that you should have spent the week doing, right? It's just, there's no shortcut to deep learning, right? And in our microwave society of today, that quick, like, I can get it quick. 3 months to get a CCNA, I can do that, right? I'm like, you could probably do that, but you won't get that deep, rich learning. Again, I'm back to my physical lab thing. So EveNG, and by the way, EveNG, Eve-NG is the only emulator that I don't have much experience with, other than I know it's out there, and I know a lot of people are starting to use it. So how do we route using the cat company we used at home? John, you got to help me out. I don't remember what the cat company was. I just wanted to let you know, says NGHI. Just want to let you know that you're one of the reasons I bought physical equipment after watching your video versus Chuck. Thank you. And by the way, Chuck and I just talked to Chuck for an hour yesterday. We are constantly talking and thinking through new ideas. So great. I'm glad that you did. So does CBT Nuggets have a plan to create CCIE content? I just got to do a quick time check. We're good. CCIE content might not be there soon. I know there's a demand for it, but it's a small demand. That's one of the things that we've found is there's a lot of people that want, like, here's how you get it, and even CCNP. But once you get to the CCIE, we haven't seen as much demand. So that's why CBT is like, oh, you know what, you might check out like Internet Network Expert or something like that. Somebody that really specializes in expert level classes. We can do it. We've had it in the past. We just found there wasn't as much demand as it was. Thank you to all the kind words from folks. All right, I'm gonna scroll down. So Tom, I'm just gonna grab yours because it's bigger. Listen to what Jeremy says, and you can't say that. He helped me get my CCNA and CCNP 7 years ago. Helped me recently, and now work as a Cisco engineer with Cisco. Tom, that's awesome. Thank you for the recommendation there. So going for the CCIE, nice. Okay, so last couple questions, and then I've got to run for my visitor. How do we route using the cable company? John is specifying. How do we route using the cable company? Oh, maybe I think I know what you're talking about. So cable company or DSL provider, they will come in and they will bring in. So I'm going to frame the question to what I think you're asking, John, and then if I'm off, I'm off. Either way, it's going to be valuable. When you're a cable provider, coax cable, your internet through cable provider comes and drops it off, they will usually put a router right in front of it. Whether it would be cable or DSL, you want to figure out how to get that thing into transparent bridge mode. And that just passes the public IP address through to where their equipment becomes transparent. It's literally just an adapter from coax or a phone line over to Ethernet cable, right? And that's what you want. So transparent bridge is how you would do that. CCNA student, okay. I see everybody's like, he's logging off. Type in more questions, man. So many. Okay, last question. Mortiza, do I need to study service provider to work for them? No, that's from a previous. Let me grab a different question. NDERITU. David. I'm a CCNA student that just started a WISP business. How do you think about that in terms of experience? I think that's awesome. I actually would love to start a WISP myself. By the way, WISP, a wireless internet service provider. These are people that go lease space or have space on the top of a high building or a tower, and they connect that to fiber optic and become their own internet service provider where they point antennas. That's where a lot of Ubiquiti stuff comes from. Ubiquiti Networks got their start in WISP-style equipment where you literally beam internet signals to different places. I think it's awesome. Because I've been in a lot of situations where a customer buys a new building and they can't get internet at that building for X months and they got people moving in. And that's where WISP comes in. But the challenge with WISP, let me say that slowly, is that it's not seen as a reliable connection. Whether it is or not, it doesn't matter. Businesses and IT people don't see it as like, I'm going to bank my internet connection on that alone. So I see a lot of WISPs in either backup situations where people have that as a backup, or it's in kind of the sparse, hard to reach areas where you're not going to convince a carrier to go trench cable because you're far away. But either way, that's where I'm like, okay, the WISP in many cases has become kind of a secondary connection, which can still be a great business. That being said, cool. So sorry. I would love to just keep going with the questions, but I literally have somebody waiting at the door for me to go meet them. So with that being said, my friends, keep it simple. Oh no, it's a live stream. Where's the stop button? Here we go.